It's 2026. I think we've heard just about every single story that we can about the transfer portal. That is why I wanted to share Mercury Swaim's story, because he is a D1 football player who transferred to UNM last year because he wanted to be a nuclear engineer. A college football player used the transfer portal to further his academics, not to get a bigger paycheck, not to face better competition so that he can further his chances of making it into the NFL. He did it because he wanted to find a school with a nuclear engineering program. So let's get to know Mercury just a little bit more. And I just want to say now, I think without question, Mercury Swaim is the coolest name in the Mountain West. I know people are going to say, what about Rocky Beers? Well, he transferred to Oklahoma, so he's no longer in the Mountain West. Mercury is from Pennsylvania, specifically Bedford, Pennsylvania, and he attended Bedford High School, where he was a quarterback. Bedford is a small town, less than 3,000 people, and Mercury was the first D1 football player to come out of his high school in well over a decade. Mercury committed to playing college football at St. Francis in Loretto, Pennsylvania, an FCS level school. And it was at St. Francis that Mercury kind of became the linebacker that we all know and love today, but it's also where he was shaping his academic career path. So Mercury came into college with the intentions to do pre-med, and then I believe it changed over to chemical engineering. He wanted to shout out his St. Francis academic advisor and professor, Dr. Zavanka, who was very influential for him and kind of put him on the path that he is now. Mercury graduated in 3 years, a double major in math and in chemistry, and he was also very quick to shout out a lot of the wonderful professors there at St. Francis. On the field, Mercury was an absolute force as a linebacker, and in 3 years, he played 24 games, racking up more than 104 total tackles and earning conference honors before deciding to enter the transfer portal. The goal of entering the transfer portal: to find a school that offers a nuclear engineering program, which was no easy thing. Because according to the Nuclear Engineering Department Heads Organization, that's a tongue twister, only 38 schools throughout the U.S. offer a nuclear engineering program. Mercury generated a ton of interest from schools like James Madison, UNLV, but really the school that he was talking to a lot at that time was the Colorado School of Mines, D2 football. Mercury was willing to play D2 football if it meant he could be a nuclear engineer. And here's a quote from Mercury himself. Obviously, I love football, but it was not something that I wanted to sacrifice my academic path that I had set out for myself. Enter in UNM. UNM is one of the 38 schools throughout the country that offer a degree in nuclear engineering. Mercury gets familiar with UNM, New Mexico, Albuquerque, and it kind of becomes his dream school. So then comes the Marshall and UNM connection. At that time, Tony Gibson was the head coach of Marshall football. Coach Gibson knows Mercury Swaim's dad, Wes Swaim, very, very well. Coach Gibson is also very good friends with Jason Eck, who is the UNM football head coach. I remember being at the Mountain West football media days. Sean Ryder from the Albuquerque Journal asked Coach Eck while he was on the presser, this Mercury guy got added to the linebacker room. Like, who is he? Like, what's his story? And then Coach Eck tells us the story. Coach Eck gets a call from Coach Gibson, and then Coach Gibson tells him, hey, I got this great linebacker for you from St. Francis, a smart guy on the field, super athletic, great in coverage. And then Coach Eck, understandably, was like, well, why are you hyping up this linebacker for me? And then that's when Coach Huff explained to him that Mercury was in search of a school with a nuclear engineering program, and that UNM was kind of like the school that checked off all of his boxes. At that time, the UNM linebacker room had already been filled out. However, Coach X still made it a priority to bring Mercury over to UNM. Well, that's because of Mercury's character, of course, and because Coach Eck has had a ton of success in the past of bringing in players who are in pursuit of tougher degrees. I've heard Coach Eck reiterate this multiple times throughout multiple pressers throughout the season. If a guy is going to school to be a doctor or to be an engineer or to be a scientist, football's probably not that hard. And, an ex-pass, bringing in these kinds of guys, they have equaled great football players on the field. How did Mercury Swaim do for the Lobos? Well, he earned his first start against San Jose State, and for the rest of the season, this guy was a permanent starter. He was also one of the best defenders on the Lobo defense. When the season came to an end, Mercury had 52 total tackles. He had earned a 77.3 PFF defense grade, and he formed one of the best linebacker tandems with Jackson Eck Oh yeah, by the way, who was the Mountain West Co-Defensive Player of the Year. Before the 2026 transfer portal opened, UNM made sure to lock up their breakout linebacker for another season. Mercury was announced as a real one by the UNM football program, meaning that he is returning next season for the Cherry and Silver. Yes, the transfer portal is the wild, wild west of college football right now. I mean, we got players that are leaving for bigger paychecks. We got players that are leaving for bigger programs, players that are just, want the opportunity to start, or players that are following their coaches, whatever it may be. It's really refreshing to know Mercury Swaim's story because it is a reminder that some football players still put a focus on academics.